Welcome to Global Kinship, exploring the evolving noosphere. My name is Gail Ransom, and I'm one of the members of the team that puts these monthly webinars together. Joining me is Penny Andrews and Bob Eisenberger, each of us sometimes switching roles, but glad to be here with you today. The noosphere was perceived by Pierre Tardin in the mid-20th century to be a layer of human consciousness surrounding and guiding Earth's geosphere and biosphere. So it would be geosphere, biosphere, noosphere. While it began as the essence of evolution of the human species, starting slowly with fire and the wheels and agriculture, the hoe, it is now growing at an exponential rate. Just for example, AI, nobody thought anything was going to happen with that at this time last year. I'd say it was even into September, nobody knew. And now it has taken us, we're moving so fast. So this is our opportunity. It's our opportunity at this point that we have so much communication and joint work around the earth that we can actually create this noosphere together. And that's what we're here to support. It's two things we support. We support both the action and the appreciation. So some people are doing actions. They're doing work that creates the connection, that creates the consciousness, that creates the good, that creates and redefines the human relationship together. And then we have those who do the appreciation, which is seeing something and saying, wow, that's wonderful, or noticing and acclaiming what a good thing it is. Because without that, each act is just a singular event. But once we have that appreciation between us, then it begins to create the net of noosphere. So we switch back and forth here for Global Kinship. Today, we're really here with the action that we have with Margie and with oh, see now, I got in the middle of my mind. My mind's in the wrong side for that.
Sally
Neaves. And so we're really happy to hear what they are doing. And our job here is to appreciate and tell others, and that will begin to make the net fit much more securely around the earth. So welcome, and welcome to that work.
Thank you, Gail. And hello, everyone. I'd like to begin. We're going to be exploring some of the work that Margie and I have been doing with Meg Wheatley. And we would love to begin by sharing one of her practices with you and with us all together. So let's begin by placing both of our feet on the ground, on the floor, wherever you are. This practice is called taking your seat. So really physically feel your backside on the seat, the muscles of your body on the seat. Your back is straight. Feeling the stability of your body in the chair. And now from your feet, let's just become aware of all of earth energy arising from below us, available to us anytime and right now. Feel earth energy entering through your feet, traveling up through your legs, through your body, and to your heart space. Feel the groundedness and the centeredness and the energy supporting your body in your heart space. And now let's become aware of energy from above, from sky, from cosmos around us. Feel this energy flowing through your crown, through your head, and down through your beautiful, extraordinary brain, your throat, and to your heart center, where it meets earth energy. Feel this energy always available to us and present with us now. And with these two energies combined in our heart center, we feel stable and we move forward into this session. Thank you. So in this session, we will be going into breakouts and exploring some of the work that Margie and I have been doing. But firstly, we would love to acknowledge country. In Australia, this is very common practice. You've probably heard it before. I'd like to acknowledge that I am on Wiradjuri country in Bathurst in central west New South Wales, and I pay my respects to elders, all elders, past and present. And you, Margie?
And I'm on Wathaurong country near Geelong in Victoria, and I too pay my respects to elders past and present.
Thank you. And wherever we all are, we pay respects to First Peoples, of course. So in this session, Margie, we're going to be chatting a fair bit about our experience of Meg Wheatley's work and where we've taken that in our lives. And it's fair to say, Margie, wouldn't you say that it has had a huge impact?
It certainly has on both of us. I'm sure that will become alive as we share with you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's begin, Margie. Would you be able to describe some of the context of, and mention some of the players in the field that have been influencing you?
Love to do that, Sally. Well, the context is important because we're aware that as we're concentrating so much on Meg's impact and how consciousness has been raised in us, we also are aware that there are many other people in this space, such as Joanna Macy, Michael Dowd, Terry LePage, Jem Bendell, Jeremy Lent, so many people, and many, many more than I've actually mentioned, Michael Shaw in Australia, who have been offering information, books, videos, YouTubes, and also practices. But just to context it for me to start with, during COVID, I certainly learned how to connect with the United States in a big way because I was getting very involved with Deep Time Journey Network, and also it was a time to be able to attend so many more courses than we could when we were full-time working. But it was Meg's book, Who Do You Choose to Be, the first edition, that really got me going with her. Even though I knew her work from the 90s, it was that book that was full of information about artificial intelligence, about the rise of violence, about the effects of climate change, and the first mention of the ending of a civilization. So it was there that I began to grasp that our civilization is crumbling. So Sally, let's chat about some of the outstanding features of Meg's work that have impacted us.
Thanks. Yeah. Overall, one of the reasons I stayed committed to this work as we've been taught it through Meg Wheatley is because for myself, I'm doing a lot of, I guess you could say, practical active or activist, and as well as community organisation work where I am. And so much of that is what Meg's work focuses on. I find that if I don't continually stay in tune with, aligned with it, it can easily become one of those things that you just sort of learn and then like it slips away, like one step forward, two steps back. So staying with this, and especially in a little group that supports that, is very important. And some of the key phrases, I guess, in her work that stayed with me and have continually supported me in the work I'm doing are phrases like "what's needed here" and "what's mine to do." So often I find myself getting overwhelmed and actually even encouraged in the work of, you know, protecting creation and restoring creation. It can be overwhelming, and you can actually feel like you've got to solve the whole world's issues at once. Like the focus is global. So that little phrase, what's needed here, you know, here, it's actually a very a local focus is what Meg is encouraging, and so many other thinkers in the field that I have been listening to. As Margie said, there are many others saying this as well. The focus is bioregional, in other words. So it's quite a local focus, because that is the scope at which we can have the most impact, and also stop ourselves from getting overwhelmed and burnt out and losing faith. So what's needed here, and what's mine to do? So what's mine to do really helps me to focus on, well, you know, when I consider the trees and the cutting down of trees, for example, is it mine to do to defend those trees? Do I have the responsibility for, you know, do I have the contacts? Do I have the skills? Do I have the people around me who could focus on that particular location? Do I draw on skills of others, such as arborists and so on, to support me? So it's quite a simple thing. What's needed here and what's mine to do, and I take a step forward. The other thing is the service, the emphasis on service rather than on the self. And I know Joanna Macy actually shares this. She says that we've got to graduate from that focus on ourself. Like, what do I need to feel like I've got purpose? What do I need to feel like I'm fulfilling my purpose in the world? Actually, we need to look at, when we look at what's needed here, it's out of a commitment to service. So graduating from the self to service, and not as global leaders, but as local leaders, as I said. So this is some of the work that Meg is supporting as well. So it's a daily commitment to that service. And really, we're creating possibility when we say, I think Theodore Roosevelt, you would all be aware of his line, do what you can with what you have where you are. So this has been an eternal mantra for me in the last couple of years of coming to Meg's work. She says that very often, do what you can with what you have where you are. And she sometimes adds, with the people around you. So so we've been exploring, haven't we, Margie, what this means when we connect with groups who can support one another. Because like I said, to stay committed to all of this takes work. And so, Margie, you've done 3 courses with Meg in the last 2 years. So it's quite an intense period of focus on that. What's really staying with you in this moment now?
What comes to mind immediately is that phrase, restoring sanity, and what Meg means by sanity, where people are creating a framework for meaningful work. You know, we are living in a stormy time, and many people are warming up like to more self-protection, to more worries and anxieties. I know every day in Australia you hear somebody saying, oh, the cost of living, it's gone up so much. But also there are food shortages, and we see it all around us, and we see those shocking wars that are happening, and they are escalating. We see incredible violence towards each other, and of course we lament so much the extinction of so many species. But like in the midst of all this chaos and pain, like we do have the power in small groups to awaken that which resides in every human spirit, which is the capacity to be kind, generous, and creative. So there are many practices to awaken this generosity and creativity and kindness in ourselves and in our in our organisations. But I remember thinking back when I first heard the word sanity, I didn't actually fully understand what Meg meant by that until I studied with her, because it's having this unshakable confidence that everyone is capable, every human is capable of generosity, kindness, and creativity. And it's how to actually draw that out, which is so important. Wow, wow, I don't know if I've explained that well enough, but anyway, let's go on. You know, you've been taking Meg's work really seriously, haven't you, Sally, in your bioregion? And you're actually practicing how to awaken kindness, generosity, and creativity.
Well, firstly, maybe I'll just unpack that word bioregion. What we mean by bioregion, if you could imagine the highest point in the land around you and out along the ridges, and then it's like the watershed or the catchment of the water. And so where the water flows from the highest point, like a bowl, down into a single point where it releases, like when you release the water out of the bathtub. So that's the basic understanding of bioregion. There are many other definitions as well, according to how you feel when you cross a border of a bioregion. A lot of it is actually quite subjective. But anyway, on a practical level, I've been working within a bioregion that suffered a really devastating flood, and a number of people died. And it was to do with the unique physical characteristics of this bioregion, but also the detrimental farming practices of that bioregion. So deforesting the land, and like if you looked at it from a satellite, you would see huge areas of land that were brown when they should be green. You know, basically that's a lot of cropping, a lot of cattle farming, a lot of sheep farming for 200 years in a land that is quite fragile and not really suitable to those practices that came over to Australia from Europe. And over many generations, this has caused terrible problems. So at the point where all the water meets is a town called Eugara. So this is in the central west of New South Wales in Australia, if you know that area. And they suffered a 1 in 2,000 year flood event, which just means that it was extremely severe. The water travelled at such a rate that normally they would have 10 hours warning from upstream, but in this case they had only 2 hours warning. And because it was so unusual, there was a lot of disbelief that it was actually going to occur in the community. And even the emergency services did not believe when people called them and said, we've got a situation here. So people had to actually help one another. And one of the things that Meg Wheatley says is no one is going to save us. The answer to every problem, especially in disaster, is community. The answer to every problem is community. So I started to understand this in this town of Eugara because they were rescuing one another. And literally no one was coming to save them. And so they needed to depend on one another. And so when it came time to help, restore this community kind of, back to what it was, we were thinking, well, and I worked for the Sisters of Mercy, and we were thinking, rather than putting people back in the same position where this could easily happen again, who knows, in a world of rolling disasters, let's think upstream. Let's think, okay, why did the water flow so fast? And so we started a program where we helped to organise farmers that were on particular creeks upstream of the town, where the land was really degraded and the creeks were very deep and narrow and the water sped up. We started implementing practices and running education programs so that farmers working together on one creek could actually create the conditions where the water would slow down. And so that's what we've been working on for the past 12 months. It's called Yugara, Slow the Flow. Now that community has been gathering together and working together so much, they've created their own land care group, which is a way we organise that sort of restoration activity in Australia. It's a well-known thing in Australia, land care. And so this land care group will be able to attract funding and volunteers and a whole lot of energy in order to slow the flow more successfully in the future. There's one more little one that I could mention as well, and this comes out when I heard from Meg Wheatley that the answer to any problem is community. I started to realise that I have access to a community that I'm part of that I haven't been paying attention to for years, and that was actually because I was raised Catholic. And I had rejected that whole community for many years for various reasons. But when I really thought about that, and I thought about the rolling disasters we are expecting, that is one community that I can instantly be part of and go and be part of, regardless of the ideas and the differences that I have with these people. Also, I was noticing I was connecting with too many like-minded people. And in Meg's course, we heard the line again and again, like-mindedness is the death of community. So by reconnecting with a church community, I realized I was connecting with people who thought very differently to me, but it was a community. So I got more involved, and as a result, I was offered the chance to reclaim an old presbytery in a town where the priests were no longer living. And it's in a beautiful spot with lots of land, and it's in a township where the community needs to pull together because of the threat of ongoing disaster. So in this presbytery, we created a demonstration site for permaculture. It's a community meeting space. It's a place for courses and learning, and also spirituality programs, retreats and so forth. So yeah, I feel once again that the answer to any problem is community, regardless of how the differences we might confront, and actually because of the strengths that come when we invite others in that think differently to ourselves.
Beautiful.
So Margie, would you be able to share a little bit about getting groups together and what you've been working on?
Be delighted, Sally. Thank you for sharing, though. I'm so happy to hear you speak so wholeheartedly about your work in that little community where you've built an eco hub as well, and taught permaculture. It's just beautiful to know that flow comes when you put the time and energy in. So that's wonderful. Look, I think it's important to say that we all have different gifts, and one of my gifts is, like, I do truly believe I'm a networker. I'm not a designated leader as such, but I do see where there is a need for a small group, and I organise to get it set up. So over the years, there's a monthly Agape group, and that little community is really deepening. There's an Eco Online group that meets monthly, and that's another little community that's deepening. But I think the one that I'd like to talk about more is the one that we began last year, and we are very committed to each other. There's about 12 of us in the group, and we like to call ourselves a little island of sanity. We're not all situated locally. We come from all over Australia. However, we've now done 2 courses with Meg together, and every fortnight, that's every 2 weeks, we've met to share what's arising in us and how we're being impacted. And it's just wonderful, because now that we've completed the courses, the group said, well, we're going to keep going. So now we've just started Meg's song lines, which is available. You'll see it on her website. It's available to anybody in the world, really, but we're doing it as a small group. But the thing is, what we're doing in this group, we're not all like-minded people. So we're taking, I've got a lovely quote that I'm trying to remember off by heart, but from Meg, which is like, we commit to creating the generosity, kindness and creativity in this group, and we expect it from each other. It's not like we are going to pussyfoot around. We really are calling each other in to leadership. And because our culture in this ruthless environment does need so many little islands of and communities where sanity prevails, we just really want to keep offering more and more of them.
Thanks, Margie. So now let's perhaps prepare for our breakout rooms. But before we go into those, I'd just like to invite us all to take a moment, to take about a minute before we enter those rooms, and just to consider, if you have in your memory an experience where you were surprised by an individual or a group's capacity. Now we will take that memory to share in a small little group of 3, and we'll have about 2 minutes each to share our memories before we return. Thank you. Welcome back. So I think we have about time for about 3 or 4 people to share in the whole group. What is something that you heard in your group that's too good not to share with the group here?
Well, I'll throw out Sally's quote, which was very meaningful to me. She said, "Nothing happens without relationships." And it was starting a group without knowing what you're doing, but nothing will happen without those relationships beginning.
Thanks, Penny. Terry.
I was struck by something that Mari said. I hope I'm saying your name right. That she lives in community, and she said they made a powerful decision to restore land to its original owners. And she said they argued all over the place, my words, not hers. And then at the end, they were unanimous in deciding to make this decision. And I love that idea that you can be all over the map in your thinking and still come together and unite.
Yes, thank you, Terry.
Thanks.
And Karen? Sorry.
Yeah, I was in this is my thought, but in a group that I was in, I remembered a incident way long time ago, but it was like, the gist of it is like, there is an energy that comes when you come together in a group and, birth something. And that to me is what happens in when you're present at something in the group.
Thanks, Karen. And Bob?
Nope. Sorry,
Oh.
that's a false raise.
Okay.
Karen's got her. Bob, I was in a small group with Diana and her camera's not working. However, she has trained, we've made reference to the warriors for the human spirit. And I was wondering, Diana, if you would share with the group what you shared with us, because it was absolutely splendid.
Well, thank you. It was from my heart. the Warriors for the Human Spirit cohort that I was in met over a series of years, and we met twice a year, and for 6 or 7 intensive days of retreat in Zion National Park in Utah,
Oh,
which is itself a sacred ground. And when Meg first began to teach about collapse, I could feel my back bristling, and I went, no, we're not going to collapse. There's something good going to come out of this. It'll all turn out fine. And I believe in the goodness of people, and we're going to be fine. And as I expanded my perspective to understand a global cosmic perspective of us as humans, as simply a part of all of the cosmos and creation, I began to see and accept collapse as happening around us already. We are not in the midst of it, perhaps, but we are in the beginning of the middle of it. And it can be seen in institutions and systems, the educational system, the medical industry. That I have 2 daughters who work in the healthcare industry, and they tell me, Mom, it's not about healthcare, it's about profit, and it's a medical industry, and our economic system, and at least in the Western European dominant models, and certainly our precious planet, we're already seeing weather changes and in rainfall and temperatures and hurricanes, and that collapse is certainly here among us, and that the only way that I can envision and that Meg teaches is in community, in relationships, as you said, having those relationships on a local, touchable look in your eyes, and then in a global way on Zoom, and to be grateful for the technology, to live out of gratitude for community.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and in those situations where we're noticing collapse, for example, of that example of the healthcare system is an example of, I think, what Meg would say of the collapse that is happening in multiple spheres.
Right.
And we can experience such huge emotions. I think every one of us, I certainly do, when we notice those pieces of the collapse occurring and we feel powerless to do anything about it. And it can lead us to become insane. And so, like Margie said, maintaining sanity, clearing our thinking before we get to those questions. We're like, we can't answer those questions, what's needed here and what's mine to do, unless we clear our thinking first and come back to our practices, such as the meditation and so on, in order to think clearly and to really reflect on what's needed here and what's mine to do.
Sally, thank you. Because I also think that noticing those feelings in meditation, noticing those feelings, and then who do I choose to be? How do I react and respond out of those feelings? And what do I choose to do as I say, what is mine to do? And to sit in quietness, to notice those feelings and perceptions that arise. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. That's wonderful to hear about your group that have been supporting one another in that. Margie, you've recently we shared with a group, our group. There was about 6 of us that shared to another group about our experience of Meg's work, and would you be able to share, like, just say the top 6 impacts of the course that when we shared that with the group, what came up?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get that. I know exactly now what you mean by that. Thank you, Sally. Just before I get into that, I was actually aware, as we were talking in the large group, about something that we haven't shared yet. Oops, where are we? I've lost you. Wait a minute. I'm coming back. Here I come. Something in the large group that prompted my memory, and that is that Meg shared Joanna Macy's Shambhala Prophecy, which is very accessible to everyone you can get it on the web, the Shambhala Prophecy. But there are two weapons, and I'm using weapons deliberately, that we who are wanting to live this way, the two are compassion and insight. And by insight, we truly mean being able to see clearly, to act wisely, and to see clearly. So it's obvious that none of us can do everything that needs to be done in the world. So we do have to continually say, as Diana said, we continuously need to choose who we are going to be and do it on a daily basis. But recently, this little group that we was asked, I'm just being distracted by what's in this. We'll come to the chat afterwards. Okay, so won't try and answer that just yet. After our group finished the courses with Meg, people kept saying to us, "Tell us about it." So we put on a Zoom a couple of weeks ago, and quite a number of people came from all over Australia and some people from internationally as well. And I'd say the 6 top things that were said, one person in the group, I'll never forget her saying this. She said, "I always thought of perseverance as drudgery. And now that I've been studying with Meg and learning about the importance of perseverance and have read her little book, Perseverance, I now see it much more as something that is mine to do, to persevere, no matter what." And also, there was another person in the group who shared, some of the practices I've learned from Meg are really helping me to ground. And she also said, I'm so glad I'm beginning to see the differences between faith and belief. If any of you who can get hold of Meg's latest, not the latest, but the book before, Who Do You Choose to Be, the 2nd edition, and in the first, there's a whole chapter on the investigation into the American Sisters, LCWR, and how in the midst of that investigation by the Vatican, they remained faithful. So Meg does a lot of really good work around what that means. Somebody else was saying how much they hadn't thought so much about how much joy you can have when you go to a place like some people who went to at the time of Hurricane Katrina. They reported afterwards that they really felt joy assisting in that moment. Another big one is, and it's been already mentioned by Diana as well, but it's how to externalize our emotions. We all are going to feel we do already, and we will continue to feel very deep emotions about what's happening. The problem is, if we keep saying things like, "Oh, I feel so powerless. Oh, I feel so upset. I feel so pained," we keep making up stories in us about how we feel. But if we externalize our feelings, so if we can actually say, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of betrayal, or there's a lot of pain. So it's not that we deny we're feeling, but we're externalizing the feeling. And it does mean we can often get ourselves balanced and back into our lives very quickly if we externalize our emotions. We have in our group a designated leader of a organization that is an actual religious order. And she shared with the whole group that being in Meg's courses was the first time that she became aware of the collapse of civilization and what that meant for her. So, you know, there's probably a whole lot more things I could share, but I was wondering, Sally, as we've got the time, if we could just go back into the large group and just see if what's arising and maybe deal with that question before we move on. How do you feel about that, Sally?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So Bob, if we could come back to the whole group,
Okay.
and we'll just see what's arising as a result.
Do you want the same groups or should we mix it up a bit?
Oh, no, not to go into groups, just to stay in the whole group so we
Ah.
can take any questions.
Sorry. So, okay. Let me remove the spotlight. You might need to put yourselves individually in.
Okay.
in
We can remove our own spotlight, can't we? So we'll just view back
no, I have to
gallery.
remove,
There we go.
I have
Beautiful.
to remove Sally's here. Hang on a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a question about sanity. What's that saying about sanity? Something about it is insanity to respond sanely to an insane situation. Perhaps sanity in this case is in fact acting in ways that standard operating procedure would define as crazy.
Does that person want to say anything more about that? Okay. Oh, there you are. Good. Yes.
That was me. No, I just as we're talking about sanity, and I love like the ideas that came up in our small group and what you've been talking about, and Meg Wheatley, and it just feels like I don't know, reclaiming sanity, but in a way that is I think when I talk to people that aren't like-minded, sometimes they think I'm insane, right? So anyway, so that notion just popped up to me with the idea of sanity versus insanity and what is actually sane and insane. So
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And Imogene, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I just thought I might respond to that. I used to be a psychotherapist, and so the idea of responding insanely to insane situation, especially in our political environment right now, it hasn't. What I've learned is that being sane is about being reality oriented, and so to bring somebody who's insane to help them relate to reality as reality can be helpful. That's just my response to your question. For what it's worth. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else arising before? Because we can. Oh yes, it does too. Yes, thanks, Bill. Yeah. Yeah. Well, perhaps we can just, Sally and I can continue. Or did you have something, Winnie? No. Perhaps we can continue just to talk to you a little bit about training, the training of warriors for the human spirit. And we're deliberately using this language, Sally and I, because it's what we have been learning from Meg. And so let's just chat together, Sally, about the name that Meg gives to this particular training is songlines. Now, any of you who are from Australia will know that all across Australia there are thousands of songlines that led the first peoples to places that they could follow. And Meg came to Australia and actually met a lot of these Indigenous Australians, and they have really supported her use of the word songlines as the name of this training. That's right, Sally, isn't it?
That's right. So it means so much to me that our group that has been meeting has committed to continuing to meet. And the Songlines program is basically the basic skills of what we call warriorship, that warriorship in the sense of the Shambhala warrior. You know, the tools or the weapons, if you like, that they use are compassion and insight. Okay, so it's a very different understanding of warriorship, but it does help us feel so clear about our actions in the world and stable. So our stability of mind, creating a more inclusive perception, the capacity to respond with awareness rather than react emotionally all the time when we're triggered. Those are the skills we are working on in Songlines. And we learn to see so clearly that we can act wisely. And this is so critical for the work that we do in the world right now. So, and Meg, I believe, is doing Songlines in the US and beyond later in the year. Yeah. And that's for the same sort of thing that we are working on, the skills of compassion and insight. Yeah. So Margie, would you share the importance, you're interested in quarterly half-day reflection processes. Could you share about that?
Yeah, well, I'm interested in recognizing that all of us, we all know in our hearts and minds that things arise in our lives that can distract us from our purpose. And one of the important practices that Meg teaches in her Restoring Sanity little book is half of the book is devoted to practices, and to keep coming back into wherever we are with whatever work we're doing, to come back and reflect on why we're doing what we're doing, and is this our work to do? And I also have, in case I forget, because I know we'll be finishing soon, but I'd also hope, Bob, that you could put into the chat Meg's website, because I think we sent that to you.
Okay, I'll find that. Yep.
Yeah, it's very simple. Yeah, thank you. Sally, is there anything else before we move back to the whole group that's arising?
I think that's all that's arising for now, Margie.
Yeah, good. Okay, then let's go back into the gallery again, and we'll see what. Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for doing that, Bob. Yeah. How much time have we got left?
We've got about half an hour, if you'd like. Up to.
Oh, great.
That's usually we end like 10 after or so, and then have questions and answers. But of course, you've been integrating that into the whole. So
Yeah.
And then we end up with something inspirational, which Penny, I think, is providing this time. Mm-hmm. So, there's that information. Shape it as you would like.
Well, if we could have 10 more minutes, why don't we have another 6 minutes in a break? What do you think, Sally? In a breakout where we look at what's arising now, and do we have any final questions before this finishes? Yeah.
Could I ask you one question first? Does that mean that you are inviting people to these quarterly Songlines workshops or meditations?
No, we're not. We were talking about the one that we have in Australia. We were just sharing with you, but we're also saying to you that if you are interested and can get Meg's book, Restoring Sanity, and learning the practices that she has there, that you will find that one in there. Yeah.
I see.
Okay. Yeah, sorry if we confused you, Gail. We didn't mean to.
I thought I was going to have see you a couple times a year. So.
Yeah, Penny?
Yeah. Margie, I know your background more than I know Sally, and so either of you can answer this, but you've done group work forever in your lives, or Margie has, and you've done Joanna Macy's work as well.
Yes.
And I'd wonder if you could say a few words about is there a different quality that comes out of working with Meg's format? Or is it, well, just if what comes to mind when I ask you that question?
Well, I can certainly say straight away that knowing how often Sally and I have both shared Joanna's spiral over a week in retreats as well as in shorter workshop versions, that there is absolutely nothing about that spiral that cuts across what Meg is teaching, because, you know, the question is what needs doing and what is mine to do. And Joanna's work is actually opening people up with the work that reconnects, is opening people up to what needs doing and how to have processes in your life and practices that enable that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I could say that for those that may be less familiar with the spiral, what we're referring to with Joanna Macy's work, there's 4 aspects of the spiral. One is beginning with gratitude. And the second part is knowing our pain for the world, honoring our pain for the world. The third is seeing with new eyes. And fourthly, it's going forth. Going forth is the final part. So I see that as a framework that holds any other work that Meg is doing that contributes to each part of that spiral.
Yeah.
So have you melded it somewhat? Have you brought the two together in your work?
I think it does happen like that, as like it's not necessarily we think we've got to meld these two people's work, but I think it just happens automatically. Margie, what do you think?
I was going to share something out of a earlier learning for me. I know Jen Callanan's here, and she's done this same course back in the 90s. We worked with an American psychologist in Adelaide who had a really deep understanding of the importance of learning and integrating, but then not to go off into the rest of your life raving on about what you've learned from that person, but actually integrating what you've learned and becoming totally yourself in it. Jen, would you like to add to that? Because this is critical. I think integration is critical to this. Yeah, Jen?
Yeah, I'm just trying to unmute myself.
You have.
Oh, I have. I'm unmuted? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Margie. My experience in that work, it helped me wake up internally and wake up to what I was seeing and noticing that I might react to, but I was drawn right deeply back into myself and felt grounded and integrated. And the little mantras of make a decision, take the risk, pay the price. Yes. That I'm it's not someone out there doing unto me. I am really seeing and noticing and being a grounded, active participant. And certainly Meg's work has everything builds on itself, really. I feel with Joanna Macy, the spiral, Meg's work, Joyce's work, it's all built on itself. Yes.
Yeah. So therefore it means, I think, in terms of what you're asking, Penny, that we wouldn't be like superimposing or like saying, oh, this is what Meg Wheatley teaches, or this is what Joanna teaches. If we're doing the spiral, we're doing the spiral, but we're also we've already integrated so much of Meg's training in us, so that it could come out just in our ad lib comments or whatever else we're doing when we're doing it. And you know, we've been impacted. I mean, I've got a psychodrama degree behind me, so of course when we come to do Council of All Beings, it's I can bring the gifts from that training to us all being able to role reverse with beings other than human. Yep. Thank you, Penny. It looks like we're not going to have time for groups now, so let's just see if there's any more questions.
I'm wondering if anybody in our group here has done work with Meg Wheatley that hasn't spoken yet, and if they'd like to comment about its impact. And then I also, Jen, you inserted 3 things: make the decision, do the work, and pay the price. Is that what you said?
Make the decision, take the risk, and pay the price. I shared that one in that work with Joyce. There were many mantras that that she shared, and often that one stays with me. And to make the decision, the informed decision, as Margie and Sally have all been sharing, of that in Meg's work, it's not learning a framework and tick that box, I do that. It's the internalizing. Make the decision. What is informing my decision, and what needs to be done here? Does that expand it? Go, Margie might want to expand further.
Well, no. I think that during the actual last course that we did, Meg suggested a practice that we take the book Perseverance that she wrote back in 2010, and that we flick it open each day. And I'm still doing that now, even though the course is finished. And it's just such a good reminder, whatever the topic is that I pick, when I read it for that day, it's like, in another world, we can pick a card, an earth card or an I Ching card or whatever, but it's like so nourishing to have that and just to bring to mind. So this work with Meg is internal work, and it requires perseverance and a hell of a lot of guts to keep going.
Yeah.
Excuse my language. And Veronica, looks like you've got a question.
I do.
Or a reflection.
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you very much. I have a comment. One was when you were saying about the integration. I was struck by a remark in our small group. One of the women, she works with Haitian immigrants, I believe, and she was describing that experience a bit, but her comment was, I'm not sure which I was more surprised about, the sort of the capacity in them or the capacity in me, or the change in them or the change in me. But it's not, it goes together. Like so that really hit me. The second thing is, I have done some work with Margaret Wheatley, and I haven't heard of these lessons that you were saying that she's offering. I haven't heard much about her for the last year or a couple of years, maybe. So I'm excited that she's still active and still doing this work, and it's something I certainly want to pick up locally.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Veronica. And also Diana has just written, flip open Perseverance, nourishing each morning when I sit on the cushion and take it with me all through the day. And take hell and heaven too. Meg taught us that also. Yes, thank you, Diana. That's great. Yes, I can. If you give me a minute, Penny, I'll go and get it.
I think Imogen had her hand up.
Yeah, I don't know how to raise the hand here. Thank you. I think it was Diana who said earlier, talked about Meg's describing climate collapse, and that's what we're in now. And for me, that's profoundly helpful to state. Again, for me, that's an example of reality. That is the reality. When we define what the reality is, then we can proceed to ameliorate it, to come together in community, to work together. So I just wanted to mention that as an example, and I just found that incredibly helpful because, there's a lot of denial and a lot of confusion about, is that really going on? And so to say, yes, it is, it's like, okay, now we can work together. I find that profoundly profoundly helpful, that kind of clarity.
That's key. It's accepting and then working together.
Yeah.
That's what we were saying in our small group, actually, that without the relationships, nothing happens. As we face collapse. And it's not, I could add to that, it's not only the climate collapse, but biodiversity collapse of health systems, church systems, finance, banking systems, all of these economic, so many things that are breaking at the same time. So that's what Meg has studied through the work of John Glave and other historians, actually. What happens when civilizations collapse historically? The difference now is that it's happening for us at a global level, not at a more local level.
Great
Well,
clarity. Thank you.
my apologies for not having given the technical instructions earlier. If you'd like to raise your hand, find your Zoom toolbar. There's a button there called Reactions, and under there you'll see the words raise hand, and that'll let us all know you're waiting to speak. Thanks.
I'm going to raise my hand again, but this time I would like to invite Terry. Terry, you've become a very important person in my life because I read your book, Eye of the Storm. I also listened to it, and with Michael Dowd reading it, and also I look at from time to time some of your practices, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to just unmute to let us know a little bit about the work you do in the world.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, I come to you from Southern California, the land of tech and deep denial. Not denial of climate issues, but denial that tech will not save us. And so the book is available for free, both on text on the internet and the wonderful reading by Michael Dowd. And it's Eye of the Storm, Facing Climate and Social Chaos with Calm and Courage. And it's a series of very short essays, because I didn't know how to write a book, but I know how to write sermons. So I'm a UCC pastor, not currently working in a church. And so it's very accessible, the little fragments. And the work I do in my day job, which is not paid, is hosting groups for the Deep Adaptation Forum on Zoom. So this is a worldwide, but mostly English speaking settler colonial people organization that was started by Jem Bendell. And Jem is how I came to the idea that collapse is happening. And what we find is that around the world, people need community to say, yeah, this is real. Yeah, it's really that bad. Yeah, I'm not crazy. And having heard that, then, we don't do that systematic work. We just gather people. But I sure, let me make this offer to all of you. If any of you want to come into our space and host a study of one of Meg Wheatley's books, or a little What is Mine to Do workshop or multi-part series, I would love to host that for you, because I happen to do the admin for our Zoom groups as well. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you.
Yeah. And now it's Gail. Thank you, Gail.
Hey, I'll be just really short, because my daughters make me do this and not talk too long about politics. But shall we just look, at least in America, about what's happening to our government? and how the destruction and recreation and reaching back into the past and reaching forward and trying to hold it up and still be good to people, or maybe not being good to people. I'm not saying which side that is, but that I think is a curious situation where actually we also can participate in with the votes, and of just an institution certainly wobbling and redefining itself. And I think institutions, as I have noticed, some organizations and institutions are redefining themselves with a different criteria than they have been, and some are not. But I look for those that aren't, that are changing, because it brings me hope.
Mhm. One thing that in our conversation feels really important in teasing out sanity is the way Joanna broke it down into and maybe you can help me because I think I'll stumble on some of them. There's the business as usual, there's the collapse piece, and then there's the creative emergence that's coming. And maybe you have the more formal terms of hers, but I think that's part of what sometimes gets confusing for understanding, you know, what's coming out of which system right now. Because, you know, there are a lot of people with their fingers in the dike trying to hold things back, and there's a lot of energy going into that. And it's important to realize that I think that's part of the work too. You know, what's mine to do is to just keep that finger in the dike and don't, you know, and be creative.
Yeah, don't rock.
But that, just know that it's all happening at once, and I think that's also why it's so important to be in community. It's because other people can see it from a different lens, where we may be getting stuck in trying to interpret or figure out our place. Is anyone in our community here in a group like this that has nothing to do with Meg Wheatley or Joanna, but there's a community that you're part of that you might want to share with us how it's active or how it's working for you? No, we have, I think, some women religious, and I know that their communities are starting to move in a direction to get this information. And Margie and Sally, your work is beyond the tradition, right? The Catholic tradition. You people come who just want to be with your community, right?
That's correct. And also, well, I am a Sister of Mercy, so I'm truly committed to being a member of the Catholic Church in that sense. But also, we are inclusive, definitely inclusive in our work. So people might come to our retreats, with your Joanna Macy retreats, for example, who don't come from a religious tradition that we come from. Yeah. Thanks, Penny. Sylvia, you've got your hand up too.
You're muted, Sylvia.
I wanted to offer something. We were talking about collapse. I organized a book club about a year ago, and our most recent book was I Want a Better Catastrophe. And in that book, there's a interview both with Meg Wheatley and also Joanna Macy, two scientists that are saying inevitable the collapse. The Buddhists are saying, well, if there is to be a collapse, we need to do the right thing anyway. And so there's two other people that were interviewed, Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's a good book because it's a compilation of different points of view on this collapse that looks in one way or another that will happen. And so I'm thinking that using using book clubs and different ways of gathering people together in small groups in a community. We have senior centers here. This is Montgomery County, Maryland. Senior centers, and we have something called Villages Networks. Does anybody know about Villages? They meet monthly with all kinds of programs, different ways of that people can get together, and having book clubs and using books like that. The name of my book club that I created about a year and a half ago is called Our Earth. And we meet every month on a Saturday afternoon. We usually have about 12, 15 people. And now lately we've been experimenting with Zooming things out. We Zoomed in the author of I Want a Better Catastrophe, Andrew Boyd. He lives in Oregon, but we were Zooming into him and he came in and talked about his book. So it's a way of, I think, creating small communities. And then, of course, it's not just the book discussion that happens. It's also your feelings about the future, and all kinds of things are exchanged, and community is created that way. So use the structures that are in the community.
That's
and
right.
Using a book as a way of organizing is just the beginnings, you know.
Mm. Thank you, Sylvia. We do that here too. Sally and I are in a book club. We did Meg's book, Who Do You Choose to Be, fairly recently in the last 12 months. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to bring people together and to share what's arising.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking back to Penny. You asked me to go and I found it. So shall I do the flick and see what comes up and then read it to the whole group?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. It's called Don't Ask Why. When we get into a difficult situation, when we're trying to solve a problem or understand another person's behavior, we can shift into analysis. Some of us are exceptionally skilled at this, and we think we've made our assessment. But the very act of analysis is a separation, standing back or outside of the situation. So this is where the practice, and maybe this is what we can take away, the practice of not knowing comes in hand. Can we just dwell with the problem or the person or the emotion? Can we just be with it without asking why? As present as we possibly can be, available to whatever information wants to be noticed. Another name for that is called bearing witness. So that's a little quote from Meg's book, Perseverance. Thank you. So I think we're really coming to the point of saying goodbye to each other. Is that right, Bob?
Yes, I believe we are. I think Penny might have had some words of closing for us.
It's kind of a classic, but it's what gathers us here and it connects us. And it's Fred Lamott's Our Mother Who Art in Gaia. Because all of this is about protecting where we are born out of and what we love. Our Mother Who Art in Gaia, brown as loam, nameless as rain, may your presence be a golden void, the absence of the search. Let your family dwell here as a circle, not a kingdom, where spirit and body, heaven and earth mingle in small sacraments of compost and compassion. Be the breath we take, the bread we make each day with our own wrinkled hands. Let our prayer word be enough. For you are the weaver of galaxies into nests for young planets, and you sing the whole sky in a robin's egg. In you, we are always home. Dissolve the veil of judgment, dispel our illusion of impurity, so that we may immerse one another in your bodily fluid of abounding goodness. For thine is the roundness and the brokenness and the healing. Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Mm. Amen. Mm. How beautiful.
Till we meet again. Thank you so much, Margie, Sally, Jen, Harry, and for all of us, Sylvia out there lifting, carrying the weight, and answering the question, what is mine to do?
Mm.
Thank you for together.
Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so good to
Thank
spend
you
the time
all.
with you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Gratitude.
be well.
Thank you, Margie and
You are